Let's start with Chivalry 2. It's one of those games that makes you feel like you're living out an epic battle scene from a medieval movie. Swords, shields, battle cries, it's all here. The first time I jumped in, I honestly didn't know what to expect. But within minutes, I was charging across a battlefield, screaming alongside other players, and it was just wild. The game really nails that feeling of being right in the middle of an all-out medieval brawl. And yeah, you might end up accidentally smacking a teammate. It happens. But that's just part of the chaos. What's cool is how each match has objectives, so it's not just a mindless hack and slash. You're pushing through enemy lines, defending castles, burning down villages. Each round feels like this mini-story playing out, where you really feel like you're fighting for your team. Sometimes it's about brute force, and other times it's about using strategy. Whether you're sneaking around to flank the enemy or holding the line with your teammates. Plus, there are different classes to mess around with. If you're feeling like a tank, go for a knight with heavy armor and a big old shield. Want to be a sneaky archer who snipes from a distance? There's a class for that too. Each one brings a different flavor to the battle, and it's fun to mix things up and see what you like best. Personally, I love being the guy in the heavy armor with a huge hammer, just charging through crowds. And the best part? It never takes itself too seriously. You can tell the game is all about having a good time. It's chaotic, but in the best possible way, where every match feels like a blend of serious combat and just plain ridiculousness. Chivalry 2 is 100% worth checking out. Next we have Returnal. So the first thing you need to know about Returnal is that it's a roguelike, which means you're going to die. A lot. And that's okay because every death is a chance to learn, improve, and push just a little bit further. The game drops you into this eerie, alien world where everything is trying to kill you. And I do mean everything. But instead of being frustrating, it's exciting. Each time you come back, the world changes, the environments shift, the enemies move differently, and you're left wondering what's around the next corner. It's addictive in the best way. The combat is fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying. You've got all these crazy weapons and gadgets at your disposal, and each one feels unique. Whether you're zipping around, dodging neon bullet storms, or pulling off a perfect shot midair, it feels like you're in a sci-fi action movie. It's chaotic, but in a way that makes you feel totally in control. Like, yeah, the odds are stacked against you, but you've got the skills to survive. The level design is so well done that even when you're running through the same areas multiple times, it never gets boring. You'll stumble upon ruins, weird alien tech, and these hauntingly quiet moments that make you stop and just look. There's this constant sense of, what happened here, that drives you to explore deeper. And this game is tough. It's not going to hold your hand or let you off easy. But when you finally overcome a challenging boss or make it further than you ever have before, it's the best feeling in the world. You'll sit there like, I did that. It's a game that rewards patience and perseverance. Next we have Dead Island 2. It's one of those games that after being in development for so long, you're just happy it finally exists. If you're into zombie games, this one is like a bloody sun-soaked vacation, where you can let loose and hack, slash, and smash your way through hordes of the undead. What's cool about it is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. The game knows exactly what it is, a fun, over-the-top zombie slasher set in sunny California. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. First off, the setting is great. Instead of a gloomy, post-apocalyptic wasteland, Dead Island 2 takes place in a colorful, almost absurdly beautiful version of Los Angeles. They call it Hell A, and the contrast between the bright, glamorous world of Hollywood and the grotesque, decaying zombies is just awesome. You're running through luxury mansions, beaches, and fancy neighborhoods, all while the city crumbles around you. It's like you're on a demented version of a sightseeing tour. The zombies themselves come in all shapes and sizes, and they're not pushovers. You've got your standard walkers, but there are also faster, more aggressive types, like runners and screamers who can call for reinforcements. Some are armored, others are on fire or covered in acid, and each type forces you to adjust your tactics. It keeps you on your toes and makes the combat feel fresh. You're constantly adapting and finding new ways to take them down, whether it's by using environmental traps, setting them on fire, or just going for headshots. Overall, Dead Island 2 is just a good time. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, but it doesn't need to. Next we have Mountain Blade 2. This isn't just a typical RPG or strategy game. It's like living out your own medieval fantasy. You start off as a humble character, but from the get-go, you feel like you're on this epic journey to carve out your destiny in a sprawling world filled with kingdoms, clans, and armies. One of the best parts? You're in full control of how you want to play. You could be a mercenary for hire, a fearless warrior leading your own band of soldiers, or even a shrewd trader moving goods across the land. There's so much freedom to just pick a path that feels right for you, and the game fully supports it, no matter what direction you take. The battles are where it gets really intense. You're not just watching the action, you're in the thick of it, swinging swords, firing arrows, and commanding your troops. And these battles are huge. You're part of these massive, chaotic skirmishes, and it feels like you're in the middle of an actual medieval battlefield. But Bannerlord isn't just about fighting, it's also about strategy. You're managing everything from your troops to your resources, deciding when to take risk or play it safe. Building alliances and managing relationships with different lords and factions adds this extra layer that makes it feel like a medieval version of Game of Thrones. Every decision you make, every alliance, and even every slight against another lord has consequences. One thing I love is the world itself. It feels alive. Villages and cities grow. People have their own lives. And you're part of this bigger world that moves forward whether you're there or not. You feel connected to the land. Next we have the Callisto Protocol. It's from Glenn Schofield, one of the co-creators of Dead Space, so if you know that series, you can expect a similar intensity here, with a unique twist that keeps things fresh. One of the things I love about this game is how it creates tension. It's not just jump scares, though there are a few really effective ones. It's that constant feeling of dread. You're almost always low on ammo and health, so every encounter with the twisted, mutated inmates of this prison feels like a struggle to survive. The combat is brutal and up close, forcing you to really get in there and make every swing count. It's not your typical action game where you can just spray bullets and move on. Here, you're scraping by with whatever resources you can find, and it adds so much to the immersion and intensity. The combat is visceral. There's this raw, almost primal feel to it. The melee system in particular is pretty unique for a horror game. You actually have to get in close to bash these creatures, and it's terrifying in the best way. You're not just standing back with a gun. You're practically fighting for your life in every encounter, which makes the experience that much more intense. What really stands out, though, is how the game creates this balance between horror and sci-fi mystery. Sure, you're dealing with terrifying creatures and survival, but there's also this big, intriguing story underneath it all. Why did everything go wrong on Callisto? What's causing these transformations? The game does a great job of feeding you bits and pieces of the narrative as you go, making you want to keep pushing forward. Next we have Mirror's Edge Catalyst. It's a parkour lover's dream, wrapped up in a clean, futuristic package with a dash of rebellion. Now the first thing to love about Mirror's Edge Catalyst is its movement. You play as Faith, a runner who dashes, vaults, and slides through the city in ways that make you feel like you're part of a live-action, first-person parkour movie. The game's mechanics encourage flow, so when you're running, jumping, and chaining moves together without missing a beat, it's just pure satisfaction. Honestly, it's one of those games where you want to keep moving, and when you hit your stride, the freedom feels amazing. One thing Catalyst really nails is how it lets you approach challenges. There's always more than one way to get from point A to point B, so it feels like you're making the game your own. Maybe you want to take a long jump over a rooftop or weave through narrow alleyways. There's freedom in how you tackle each obstacle. Plus, there are time trials and side missions scattered around the city, so if you're a speedrunner at heart, there's plenty to test your skills. The City of Glass, where the game takes place, is a work of art. It's a super clean, almost clinical, futuristic landscape that somehow still feels vibrant and alive. The design team went for a minimalist style, with splashes of color that guide you through the world, making every jump and turn feel like it's part of a bigger, sleek canvas. Glass is structured as an open world in Catalyst, which means you can explore its rooftops and hidden pathways at your own pace. Next we have Rise of the Ronin. If you've ever wanted to step into the shoes of a samurai in a world at the crossroads of history, then this game is going to blow your mind. Right away, you're thrown into 19th century Japan, an era filled with massive change, where tradition and modernization are colliding. It's like being part of a living, breathing history lesson, only with swords, epic battles, and this incredible atmosphere that just pulls you in. The combat is where it truly shines. It's got that classic samurai swordplay feel, But there's a modern twist too. It's all about timing, precision, and making every strike count. When you're in the heat of battle, you feel this rush of intensity. But what's even cooler is that you also have firearms at your disposal, which brings this unique balance between traditional and new. So you're not just relying on your katana. You're adapting and making use of everything around you. Plus, if you're into exploration, there's so much to find. There are side quests and hidden details that flesh out the world, rewarding you for going off the main path and just taking your time. It's the kind of game that encourages you to slow down, appreciate the world, and really immerse yourself in the experience. Beyond the battles, Rise gives you these powerful story moments that make you feel connected to the people and the history of the era. You're not just a fighter, you're a part of the world's story, shaping events as they unfold. The choices you make feel impactful, and there's this sense of weight to each decision, almost like you're carrying the spirit of the era with you. Next, we have Remnant 2. If you've ever thought, I want Dark Souls but with guns, this is literally the game for you. The best part is how they mix that tough, Souls-like gameplay with co-op. Like, you're dodging and weaving through boss fights with your friends. What I didn't expect was how varied the worlds are this time around. You're not just in some post-apocalyptic setting. You're hopping between dimensions, and each one feels so distinct. One second, you're in this creepy, gothic forest, and the next, you're in this futuristic sci-fi city battling weird robotic enemies. The variety keeps things feeling fresh, like you're never sure what the game's gonna throw at you next. Speaking of enemies, oh man, they do not mess around in this game. Every time you enter a new area, you get this uneasy feeling like, okay, what's gonna try to kill me here? And the bosses? Don't even get me started. They're so creative and challenging. It's like a new puzzle every time you face one. You're constantly trying to figure out the patterns, the weak spots, and how to stay alive. It's tough, but in a way that makes you want to keep trying. You know that feeling when a boss wipes the floor with you for the 10th time, but you finally crack it, and you just feel like a god? That's what Remnant 2 is all about. I think what really hooked me, though, is the way the game encourages you to try different builds. You've got these archetypes, right? And each one changes how you approach combat. Like, do you want to be the tanky guy, soaking up hits, or the guy running around sniping from the back? You can switch it up mid-game too, which is great because it means you're not stuck in one playstyle. Next we have Thief. Fans of the original Thief games loved the deep stealth mechanics and immersive world building. But when the 2014 version came out, it got a lot of flack from longtime fans and critics alike. People felt it didn't capture the spirit of the originals, and there were complaints about the clunky controls, linear level design, and a story that didn't quite hit the mark. One of the big issues was how it handled the stealth mechanics. In the older Thief games, you had more freedom to approach situations in different ways, and it felt very open-ended. But with this reboot, many players felt like it was more restrictive, with levels that funneled you into specific paths. That loss of freedom didn't sit well with fans who loved the open-ended, creative gameplay of the original series. On top of that, some of the AI was criticized for being too predictable or outright dumb at times, which kind of broke the immersion for a stealth-focused game. But here's the thing, if you step back and take Thief 2014 for what it is, it's actually a pretty solid stealth game. It's atmospheric, the dark, gritty world of the city is really well designed, and when the stealth mechanics click, it's super satisfying. Sneaking around, looting treasures, and staying in the shadows can be pretty immersive if you're not too worried about how it compares to the originals. Plus, visually, the game looks great. The attention to detail in the environments and the lighting effects really help to set the mood. The sound design is also a big highlight. Using sound to your advantage or avoiding noisy surfaces makes the stealth feel more intense. Next we have State of Decay 2. This game really knows how to make you feel like you're in a zombie apocalypse. It's not just about surviving day to day, it's about building a life in a world that's gone to hell. It's got action, strategy, and a little bit of that community building feel that makes it unique. So, right off the bat, the game drops you into this open world full of zombies, and it's up to you to find survivors, scavenge supplies, and build a community that can actually stand a chance. What's cool is that every survivor has their own skills, strengths, and even weaknesses, so it feels like you're working with real people. You're not just collecting NPCs, you're creating a team with their own stories and personalities. And the best part? It's super unpredictable. You might think you have things under control, And then, suddenly, there's a horde of zombies at your base, or your best scavenger is out on a mission and doesn't come back right away. It keeps you on your toes in the best way possible. You've got to manage food, medical supplies, and even morale. If someone's unhappy or stressed, it can really throw the whole community into chaos. The base building aspect is another standout feature. You're not just finding a spot and settling in. You're creating a place to live and thrive. You get to decide where to put things like gardens, watchtowers, and beds, and those choices actually matter. Building up your base is one of those things that feels genuinely rewarding because it's not just for show, it impacts how well your group survives. Next, we have Subnautica. This game is a total gem for anyone who loves exploration, survival, and a hint of mystery. You start out stranded on an alien ocean planet. There's this incredible mix of wonder and tension as you explore. It's like the game is always pushing you to go a little bit deeper, a little bit further, just to see what's out there. One of the things I absolutely love about Subnautica is how it nails the feeling of discovery. The ocean is vast and filled with all sorts of creatures, plants, and places that are as beautiful as they are mysterious. Every time you dive, you're uncovering new things that make you feel like a real explorer. And even though it's underwater, the world feels so alive. From shallow coral reefs that are bright and colorful to the darker, deeper zones that get way more intimidating. It's all crafted with so much detail. You've got to manage your oxygen, food, water. It's challenging, but in a way that feels fair and really keeps you on your toes. There's something so satisfying about scavenging for resources, crafting equipment, and upgrading your gear as you go. Slowly building up your tools to explore deeper and farther feels super rewarding. It's like every small success is a huge win, and you get this incredible sense of progress. And the creatures? They're incredible. Some are friendly, just minding their own business, but others? Well, let's just say there are a few surprises in the deep that make your heart race. The game does this brilliant job of making you feel small, like you're just one tiny part of this huge ecosystem that doesn't necessarily care about you. Next we have Until Dawn Remake. What makes Until Dawn so unique is that you're the one guiding the story. Every choice you make, every little decision, has a real impact on what happens to these characters. And in this remake, those intense moments feel even more vivid and polished. One of my favorite things about Until Dawn is how it feels like you're in a horror movie, but you're the one calling the shots. You're constantly making these choices, sometimes tiny, sometimes huge, and they all add up in ways you don't expect. It's the kind of game where you second-guess every choice, wondering if you did the right thing or just doomed someone. The remake brings even more of that suspense, and the character movements and expressions feel way more lifelike, so you're fully sucked into every tense moment. The characters are all really fleshed out too. Each one has their own quirks, personalities, and flaws, and you can actually feel the chemistry between them. It's like hanging out with a group of friends who have a shared past, and sometimes you have to decide who you want to trust or protect. The writing and performances feel even sharper here, making you care about these characters and root for them, while at the same time, you're totally nervous for them. The Until Dawn remake is one of those games that'll keep you glued to the screen. It's not just about surviving the night, it's about making choices you can stand by, or maybe ones you regret later. It's intense, thrilling, and incredibly satisfying, and it'll definitely keep you coming back for more. So grab a controller, dim the lights, and get ready for a wild, haunting ride. Next we have Sons of the Forest. If you're into survival games with an edge, this game takes that experience and dials it up in all the best ways. Right off the bat, it's intense. You crash land on this eerie, sprawling island, and it's clear from the get-go that you're not exactly alone, but there's a thrill to it that keeps you totally hooked. The game doesn't just drop you into a survival scenario. It throws you into a living, breathing ecosystem with some truly jaw-dropping realism. You feel like you're out there, battling against nature, and some other things we won't spoil. But I'll just say, the sense of isolation combined with danger is palpable. One thing I really love here is how the game rewards curiosity. You can choose your own pace, either charging ahead to explore, or taking things slowly to craft and build up your defenses. And man, the crafting system is deep. You'll be making everything from simple shelters to advanced traps, all while keeping an eye out for resources. It's this blend of strategy and suspense that keeps you on your toes the entire time. What's different from the usual survival experience is how it feels so grounded. Even simple things like setting up a campfire or catching fish feel like real-life survival tasks. You're not just managing hunger and thirst, you're adapting to the environment and learning its rhythms. And speaking of the island, this place is gorgeous in a haunting way. It's full of these dark, atmospheric forests and mysterious caves that call you to explore, but also send a chill down your spine. Next we have Once Human. What's cool here, it's not just about staying alive, it's about piecing together what happened to this world and how you fit into it. Every corner you turn, there's a story waiting, something eerie and fascinating. And the survival mechanics are deep, but never overwhelming. You're constantly gathering resources, crafting gear, and figuring out how to stay one step ahead. What's great is that it keeps you on your toes, always pushing you to think about your next move. But there's this balance. You're surviving, but you're also unearthing secrets and discovering new abilities. It feels rewarding, almost like every little victory brings you closer to understanding the world around you. Then, there are the creatures, each one more twisted and bizarre than the last. They're not just monsters. They have personalities, and they adapt based on how you play. Sometimes, you're just staring at these things, wondering how on earth they came to be. It's creepy, but in a way that makes you want to know more. Now, if you love multiplayer games, Once Human has a great co-op aspect that brings a whole new layer to the experience. Working with friends to survive and explore adds this camaraderie that makes each encounter unique. It's about building a little community, fighting alongside friends, and sharing those heart-pounding moments together. The environments have this gritty, decayed beauty to them, almost like a post-apocalyptic dreamscape where nature and the supernatural collide. Once Human just has this vibe, a mix of mystery, horror, and exploration. Next we have Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Now, I know a lot of us have waited years to see more of Pandora since the original Avatar movie. Whether you loved it for its visuals, the unique world, or just getting lost in this strange, immersive place. Well, here's the perfect excuse to dive back in and actually be in Pandora, not just watching it on a screen. The cool thing is, you're not just wandering around as a tourist. This is your home, and as you're exploring, you get this real sense of belonging. The way they've crafted the interactions with the world and other Na'vi characters just pulls you into the story. It's personal and really touches on that classic theme of connecting to nature, but on a whole new level. Combat-wise, it's balanced in a way that makes you feel powerful, yet still in tune with the environment. The Na'vi weaponry isn't just about brute force. It's more graceful, blending seamlessly with nature. It's not like you're there to destroy, but rather defend and protect, which gives a nice sense of purpose to every fight. And honestly, if you're into exploration, you're going to have a blast. Pandora's open-world setup lets you go off the main path, uncovering hidden spots that tell little stories of their own. It's the kind of game where you don't mind getting lost, because there's always something breathtaking to discover. So yeah, if you're looking for a game that's both visually stunning and has depth, give this one a shot. It's the kind of experience that'll stick with you long after you've turned off the console. Next we have V Rising. So, right off the bat, you start as a weakened vampire who's just woken up after a long slumber. Your first goal? Rebuild your power, avoid sunlight, and, of course, drink a little blood along the way. The survival elements here are a unique twist, since they're all woven around classic vampire lore. Staying out of the sun isn't just an aesthetic choice. Sunlight will literally kill you in seconds if you're caught out. So every move you make is strategic. You're ducking between shadows, planning your hunts at night, and it gives the whole game this great layer of tension. It's rare for a game to make you feel so vulnerable as a powerful vampire, but V Rising pulls it off in such a clever way. There are forests, eerie castles, haunted villages, and a lot of places just begging to be explored. And it's not just about sightseeing. As you explore, you're gathering resources and materials to build up your very own castle. Yes, you get to build your vampire lair. This becomes your home base. And you can customize it however you like, filling it with coffins, crafting stations, and all the gothic decor you can dream up. The castle building aspect adds this fun, creative twist to the game. Combat is another area where V Rising really shines. It's not just hack and slash. There's actually a lot of skill involved. You have a range of vampire abilities you can unlock, like dashing around enemies, summoning dark magic, or even transforming into different forms. It's fast-paced and feels super satisfying. Next we have Persona 5. Without spoiling anything, you play as a high school student with a secret double life. By day, you're navigating the trials and tribulations of school, classes, exams, and hanging out with your friends. But by night, you're a phantom thief, sneaking into mysterious realms to change hearts and fight evil. It's as cool as it sounds, trust me. The menus, the animations, even the transitions, everything feels like it was designed by someone with a passion for flair. Every little detail screams, we're going to make this look amazing, even if it's just a loading screen. And don't even get me started on the music. The jazzy soundtrack is the kind of thing you'll be humming for weeks after you play. And the gameplay. It's this perfect blend of turn-based combat and life simulation, and somehow it works beautifully. One moment you're strategizing in these gorgeous, surreal dungeons, pulling off stylish combos and unleashing your personas, which, by the way, are basically manifestations of your inner psyche. The next, you're deciding how to spend your free time. Do you study for your next exam, work a part-time job, or go out for ramen with your friends? The balance between these two sides of the game is just chef's kiss. What I love most, though, is how Persona 5 makes everything you do feel meaningful. Spending time with your friends, called confidants, isn't just fun, it also gives you bonuses in battle. Doing well in school or working a part-time job helps you build skills that open up even more opportunities. Even the smallest choices feel like they matter, and that's such a rare thing in games. Next we have Darksiders 3. It's one of those games that brings back the classic hack-and-slash vibe, but with a modern twist. You play as Fury, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and man, she's got a serious attitude. I loved how her character is all about being fierce, independent, and, well, fiery. She's not here to play nice. What's cool is how Fury's abilities evolve as the game progresses. You start out with her whip, which is already pretty awesome for crowd control and long-range attacks. But then you get these elemental powers called hollows. They're like different forms Fury can take on, and each one changes her combat style. It's super fun to switch between them in the middle of a fight, mixing up your moves to keep things interesting. Plus, the design of these forms, just badass. You've got fire, storm, and all sorts of cool effects that look amazing in battle. The world design in Darksiders 3 is pretty unique too. It's not a huge open world like in Darksiders 2, but more interconnected levels with a lot of exploration. There's a Metroidvania feel to it, where you'll come across areas you can't access yet, and then later, when you've unlocked new powers, you can backtrack and find hidden secrets. It adds a nice layer of exploration without feeling overwhelming. The story is pretty solid too. It's not overly complicated, but it ties nicely into the whole Darksiders universe. Fury's journey is all about hunting down the 7 deadly sins, and along the way, you get some cool lore and moments that tie back to the other horsemen. Next we have Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Let me just say that the moment I booted up the Veilguard, it felt like wrapping myself in a warm, familiar blanket. I mean, who doesn't love a good fantasy romp? The sound of the character introductions, the sweeping landscapes, it practically oozes the charm of the Dragon Age universe. I found myself grinning like a total dork within the first few minutes. Now, one of the things I absolutely adore about games like this is the character customization. I think I spent a solid hour just tweaking the looks of my character. You can choose everything from their hairstyle to facial markings. I tried making a chaos-fueled mage, but I also found myself being drawn to this graceful elf warrior with a penchant for dramatic flair. Talk about options galore. Honestly, the character creator should get an award for being so addictive. And guess what? The combat feels so fluid and dynamic. Each battle had me on the edge of my seat. Whether I was charging in with my sword or spinning spells like some sort of magical DJ, the thrill was palpable. The tactical aspect comes back strong as well. I was constantly adjusting strategies on the fly. If you like the mix of action and thinking ahead, you're going to be hooked. The companions in the Veilguard are absolutely top-notch. I found one companion who was a bit of a jokester, and I couldn't stop myself from responding with my witty little comebacks. It's surprising how invested I became in their stories. They're all like your favorite friends who are ready to join you on an epic quest, minus the possibility of them stealing your fries. Next we have The Quarry. Now this is one of those games that really nails that interactive horror movie vibe. If you're a fan of games like Until Dawn, you'll feel right at home with this one. It's got all the classic horror tropes, teens stuck in the woods, creepy atmosphere, and a ton of choices that can make or break the story. What I immediately loved about The Quarry is how cinematic it feels. It's like you're watching a 90s slasher flick, but you get to control what happens. The graphics are top-notch, and the character models look almost lifelike. Sometimes I'd forget I was playing a game because it feels like you're directing your own horror movie. The voice acting is also solid, with a great cast, including some familiar faces like David Arquette. I think that adds to the charm because you feel like you're watching a real cast play out this insane story. And let me tell you, the story can go in wild directions depending on your choices. Every decision you make matters, from dialogue options to how you handle certain situations. Are you going to be the hero and save everyone? Or is your character going to make a dumb horror movie mistake and end up dead? It's totally up to you. The branching narrative is a big part of the fun because it keeps you guessing, and you can play it multiple times to see how different choices play out. One of the coolest parts about The Quarry is the setting. It's this rundown summer camp in the woods, and the way the game builds tension is masterful. At first, everything seems normal, maybe a little too quiet, but as night falls, things start getting weird.